On the Danny Jones show, this Anunnaki expert claims that the Sumerian texts debunk the Bible. So we're going to be diving into them and see whether they have some validity or not. In shocker, I don't think so. But we're going to be diving into this. Let's go.
That's like one of the mysteries of it is why do these people live so long or this sort of thing? And of course, and if you don't know, you say aliens. But yeah, so what I found though when looking at some of those stories about those that came from above or what have you, and the story I'm sure you're familiar with the story, right? The idea is that something came to these Sumerians and then taught them agriculture and all of this, but also enslaved them, wanted to mine the atmosphere for gold, or wanted to mine our place for gold because they were losing it in their atmosphere. It's this entire like sci-fi story, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of did a more earthly analysis of it and looked at some of the stories that were the precursors to the basic like Old Testament Bible stories, like the Noah's Ark, for instance. And this is one of the reasons why the school system didn't necessarily focus a lot on the discoveries during the period between the 19th century, early 20th century, because it was when they were being found, it was during this period of a little bit of a transition, but also it was very Christian oriented. And so the archaeologists and people who found these just didn't think the public needed to know. So they didn't hide it per se, but they just didn't advertise it. They were just like, nah, we don't want to rock the world order. Let's just do our research and be done with it.
Let's hide the original sources.
Yeah, because what happens is when you follow those old stories, first of all, it puts the biblical stories back much further in time, and they are also very different. So the Noah's Ark story.
How does that debunk the Bible, though? And it wouldn't rock people's world and belief systems either. But let's continue to see what she has to say.
In particular, paints a picture very vividly of an individual, a Noah-type figure who is adept at science and magic and sees signs in the sky that something's going to happen. And he does not build a boat, but instead he gathers, not his family either, but he finds all of the people from the civilization that were the most important scientists, what we would call scientists, so individuals who were good at all of the things that you would want if you were making a breakaway civilization. And then he gathered the animals of the steppe, not two male lions walking up the boat and like the nursery rhyme thing show. But the animals of the steppe. The animals of the steppe were important because these would have been the animals that if you were a nomadic steppe tribe, you would have carried those animals with you for sustenance. They would have been something that you would want to bring them with you to make a caravan, a nomadic group of people who would say, like, we're going to leave what we think may be some sort of cataclysm, and we are going to get the animals of the steppe, and we're out of here. And everybody else, maybe you're going to stay, maybe you're going to go, whatever, come with us, but we're going to go and find dry land. And the reason for that is that on the Eurasian steppe, where this is proposed to have happened, if you bring ungulates with you, you are able to. It sounds sad,
What's
but
an ungulate?
So like animals that are grass eating, like like maybe goats and cows and that sort of thing. So they could bring their sheep and goats with them, and when the times were tough and there's no food, you can bleed the animal and drink the blood and still keep the animal alive.
What? Here's the thing. There are so many flood stories outside of the Bible that are really similar. I think that just corroborates with what the Bible says. It doesn't just say, oh, it debunks it or it's totally different. No. We may not know exactly how certain things happen, how the flood happened, or how the world, let's just say, was destroyed. But the Bible is clear and states that these things did happen. And there's evidence for it.
Way that people create, so sounds mean, but it's still something that some people practice today for that very reason. It's traditional, and that's what they could have done. Another thing
we
too,
used to do that with humans in antiquity. I heard. Did I read that on one of your essays?
I don't know, but
that people used to drink the blood of the warriors or something to get like their warrior powers.
I believe it. That's very occultish.
written about that, but I'm very familiar with
I
that.
read
And
that
yes,
somewhere
yes,
recently.
no, it's totally a thing. And yes, they did that because there's like these different hormones and things. And so
Right.
they thought, of course, they didn't know they were the hormones, but later when people try to propose that, hey,
Yeah.
maybe we should start.
All right, so now she goes to another part where the attempt to save humanity contrasts with the biblical narrative. All right, so something else is contrast with the biblical narrative.
There's so many parallels between the Sumerians, the Greeks, even the Mayan cultures, like with these different figures and these different stories, like the flood myth and all that stuff. And it's interesting how like all of that was pushed to the side and sort of buried. And then when the church came about and then, tried to just destroy the knowledge base of, antiquity and therefore, everything else. And it's just interesting once you learn those parallels and you see like, how does this make sense? Like if this guy, Yahweh, wanted to flood the earth, why the hell would he get Noah to go save everybody? Like he just tried to destroy humanity. Why is he getting somebody to save him? Well, you've learned that that's not actually.
Well, it's also a foreshadowing of Jesus, but also he was pure and righteous. That's why he decided to save mankind. And obviously, God promised that he would restore the line through Eve's seed, through mankind's seed. So he can't just destroy everyone and restart all over.
Story.
Right.
Like it was in Sumeria, it was Enki, I believe. And then in Greek, it was Prometheus, who like created humanity and then actually tried to save humanity by going against Zeus. And it's just like, and then I think it's Quetzalcoatl in the Mayan story.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's just fascinating how like it's just changed and it makes no fucking sense in the Bible.
No sense at all because it's a Bible is not a book. It is a collection of books that, it's a library. So it has to be read as such, not in a linear way.
Yeah.
So that is, so you mentioned Enki, and that's kind of an important component to this because he is a Promethean figure. So in that sense, it was like Enlil would have been like the equivalent to say like a Yahweh, like a storm god, a desert storm god that, but the edict was.
How is that equivalent to Yahweh? Yahweh is considered to be the creator of the universe, the creator of all things, not a storm god. Like, what are we talking about here? Now she's going to tie in something to the occult, which is very interesting. Where it's almost like bringing in a new religion, obviously.
Over there, a lot of people from Britain, although Helena Blavatsky was, Russian, but a lot of people in those circles would go travel to India, be enchanted with some cool ideas, get themselves a guru, and then come back and start making brotherhoods and associations. And that is connected to that mystery school that I got involved with and then dropped out of. And that mystery school is the Lucis Trust Arcane School. And so that one,
Lucis Trust.
The Lucis Trust.
Yep.
Yes. And so they have a UN affiliation, and they even have a meditation room at the United Nations headquarters that has a
What?
big altar in the middle of it
No.
and some lovely, art. And
What? This is where it gets concerning about the one world government and the one world order. I wonder, does she think this is a good thing or she thinks it's pretty messed up?
yeah.
Does it look anything like this room?
It kind of reminded me of it a little bit, not gonna lie. So, but yeah, that's the way that I got looped into that a little bit was because my curiosity was just like, I gotta know what's this person doing, what's that, and I'm getting these, correspondences, and I came across this information, and I was like, let me see, and so I applied. And the application was just really detailed. Then I talked with somebody, they wanted to know my genetic background, which I thought,
Whoa.
that's weird, right? I didn't give them my 23andMe or anything, but I did give them a snapshot of it. And I'm like, okay, so I would not advise this obviously to people, but I didn't even think. I was just like, I want that information. What's going on? I got one thing leads to another. And then I'm like, before I knew it, I was a student enrolled. And I'm like, okay, now what? Right. And so I'm very interested in this. I'm like, they're all love and light, which You know, if you know anyone who's into that, some people are very authentic in that and good for them. But there are a lot of people who use love and light as a different kind of moniker. So they hide what it is they're actually doing or thinking behind this. So essentially, Lucis Trust is pretty open to, you can go on their website and look up most of their materials. And so it's another
Didn't they change it from Lucifer or something?
They sure did. It was the Lucifer Trust.
No. So it's literally a satanic school for Lucifer Trust instead of Lucis Trust. What?
Publishing. And it was started by Alice Bailey, who was a theosophist, who broke away from Annie Besant, who, again, going back to that time in Britain in particular where socialism was kind of bubbling up and people were trying to be more like civic and have civil rights and this sort of thing. A big movement in the feminist movement was like this Annie Besant, and the Theosophical movement was behind a little of that. Also freeing India because they had a vested interest in India. And so they made their they made a name for themselves doing that stuff. But it was in the service of this kind of occulted view. So going back even further, but not that much further, to the 1800s, you have Eliphas Levi, who was the guy who did the art of Baphomet. If you know Baphomet, and you can imagine what Baphomet looks like, that is from Eliphas Levi. So he was a magician. And he created Baphomet and all of this as a socialist sort of icon.
I always get Baphomet and Pan mixed up.
They're easy to do. Yeah.
Maybe because they're so similar. Maybe they're from the same demon.
That one Baphomet. On the Wikipedia, that's the classic drawing. So he did this because he was actually a Catholic priest, and he decided that socialism was actually the true Catholicism, is what he called it.
What?
And so he dropped out. He turned himself into a magician and wrote a very influential book on magic, books on magic, and influenced Crowley and others. And so,
of course, he influenced Aleister Crowley.
The notion of socialism was really wrapped up into this and people's view of it.
So the notion of socialism she's mentioning is all wrapped into the satanic cult. What? I believe it. For the most part. Man.
We're just getting into a fervor. It was the like the occultic revival later. So so all of this is happening, and people get really interested in importing these Eastern ideas, which in what's called the second occult revival in the 1960s, you see them kind of repeating the same thing with the Beatles going out and getting themselves gurus and doing this, and an influx of like natural food stores and hippies and whatever. But in Anton LaVey, that whole like current that runs through that is the second occult revival that sort of links itself to the first, which was going on here with Levy, figures like Besant and Alice Bailey. And so they're essentially doing these like magic workings. And yes, it's Lucifer Publishing that ended up being the Lucis Trust. So I was curious and I wanted to know, what are they up to? What's going on?
I was curious, apparently.
And I ended up getting their correspondence, their bulletins, and they're wild. One thing that they did that I thought was notable was in a very culty way, they assign you what they call a secretary, but they're really just a handler because they're a licensed clinical psychologist. Like that seems like a lot. Why do you need all that? If you're not going to like try to brainwash a person, right? I mean, isn't that kind of, yeah. So that was interesting. And so this person kind of like wants you to do these monthly reports. So like meditation reports to the full moon.
Sounds kind of like Scientology.
Totally. Well, that's the thing is all of these things end up being the same kind of practice.
Sheesh. I feel like that's an underlining demonic cult for all of these. Anything where they have to check up on you, and they all stem from one thing, and that's pride. Being your own God, not submitting to authority, not surrendering your life. You could be your own God and do what feels good to you, and that's it. You only have to respond to yourself. And that is where the demonic stuff comes in. It's rooted in Lucifer's lie, what the serpent said to Eve, you will be like God. And all of them are like that. That's what they promise. So that is absolutely fascinating stuff. The entire video will be in the description below. You can check it out. Craziness, crazy stuff. It's crazy that some of it's part of the UN, apparently, according to her. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Love and appreciate you all. Have an amazing day, and God bless.